What's going on, everybody? 2021 is finally here, and I thought it would be a great idea to start off the year by giving you guys an updated top 20 films of all time. If that sounds interesting, let's hop right into the video. What's going on, guys? My name is Dominic and I love to talk about movies, and if you love movies as well, you're going to love my channel, and definitely you should consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell so you are the first to know whenever I upload a brand new movie video just like this one. Now today I'm going to be giving you guys an updated top 20 films of all time. It has been a long time since I made my last top 20 films of all time. It's changed like almost completely. There are definitely some that were on that list that are still here, but there are a bunch of new picks. There are a bunch of position changes and all that sort of stuff. So without further ado, let's get right into the list. Coming in at my number 20 spot, I have Good Will Hunting. Now this is a film that is new to the list that I saw last year in 2020 for the very first time, and I was honestly blown away by it. I had known that this was a good film before I'd seen it, but I was not expecting to be as invested emotionally as I was with this film. Obviously you got incredible performances from Matt Damon and Robin Williams as well. They give some phenomenal performances. Ben Affleck honestly gives a pretty great performance as well. The story is incredibly investing. I love Will Hunting as a character and Sean Maguire. He is really great. They both have amazing characters. They have a great dynamic together. I think they had amazing chemistry. I think the acting is honestly mostly what carries the film for me, because the visuals, direction, that sort of stuff isn't incredible. It's definitely good, but it's not anything to go on about. But I think what does carry this film obviously is the phenomenal screenplay, which won at the Oscars, and the acting, which was just top notch. I'm pretty sure Robin Williams won an Oscar for this movie, but don't quote me on that. But overall, this is just a really great emotional film that I think everyone should watch because it'll make you feel good. Coming in at number 19 is another new film to the list because it is just a new film, and that is Soul. This is now my favorite Pixar film, if you can believe it. It is absolutely phenomenal. I love the animation, is just actually just gorgeous. The best animation I've ever personally seen. I think they mixed a sense of photorealism with kind of cartoony characters really well. I think it looked just incredible. Joe Gardner is a great character, extremely human and really relatable. And I loved the themes of existentialism and sort of finding your purpose in life. It really touched me and resonated with me because I've personally gone through that sort of stuff in my life. So seeing it applied onto the screen in such a way that is really accessible and honestly fun to watch is something that was really cool to see. And I overall just really loved the film. I think some people complained about that they should have spent more time on Earth, but I think they had a solid mixture between Earth and in the Great Before. So honestly, I really can't complain. This is a phenomenal film, my favorite Pixar film. But yeah, Soul comes in at number 19. Coming in at number 18, I have Damien Chazelle's La La Land. Now this is one of two films I've seen from him. You will be seeing another one of his films on the list a little later on, but La La Land is still absolutely incredible. I absolutely love this film. You got Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling in the main roles, who both absolutely kill it. Their acting performances were just so good. They were both nominated for Oscars, and Emma Stone actually won her category, which totally deserved. She was amazing in this movie. Damien Chazelle's direction in this film was really great, as is in both films that I've seen him. The editing, the music is just so good. There are so many catchy and just songs that I love to listen to even when I'm not watching the movie. You got some great colors and some color grading and all that sort of stuff that really makes the film pop. and the set design and everything like that really just brings the whole film to life. And overall, as an entire package, this film works so well. There isn't one thing that really stands out amongst the rest. Everything is just so amazing, and I think that's what makes this film so great, and it comes in at number 18. Coming in at my number 17 spot, I have the French film Lahain. Now, if you know about foreign film or any like really popular foreign films from the past, you definitely know what this film is. But if you're more into kind of mainstream movies, you probably don't know what this is, which is really unfortunate because it is a phenomenal movie. It is basically about these three friends kind of just traveling around and doing their thing as they're waiting to see if one of their friends who was put into a coma by police, if he's going to survive, if he's going to die. And it kind of just goes through the emotions of these friends kind of just going through this time, and with the riots that were in Paris at the time, which is when this movie took place, and police brutality, all that sort of stuff. And I think on top of it being an incredibly made film, the black and white cinematography is amazing, the editing and the dialogue is really kind of choppy and aggressive, and I think it really works for this film. The acting, again, is really raw, masculine, aggressive, which is exactly what I think these was trying to be portrayed in this film, because these characters were incredibly fed up with, obviously, the police, and because they were rioting and all that sort of stuff. So overall, this film is like a really masculine and aggressive movie, but I think it is one that everyone needs to see because on top of all of the amazing technical elements, you got some social commentary on like police brutality and racial inequalities and discrimination, all that sort of stuff that is portrayed wonderfully in this movie, and I think that relates especially to today's day and age. So I think not only is it a phenomenal movie to watch, but it is an important movie to watch, so I can't recommend this one enough to you guys. Lahain comes in at number 17. Coming in at my number 16 spot, I have 12 Angry Men. Now this is objectively one of the best made films of all time. It all takes place basically in one room. There basically is a jury of 12 angry men who are trying to convict whether this person who supposedly committed a crime, whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent. And it's basically the story of how they get to their conviction. Honestly, it sounds extremely boring, but I promise you it is not. It's one of the most immersive, entertaining films that I've ever seen. The cinematography for being in one room is absolutely incredible. The acting performances are just great. They're incredible. There's a few standouts for sure, but overall across the board, it's all pretty great. The direction by Sidney Lumet is really great, and basically everything about this movie is like near perfect. If this was a sort of objective list, I don't like using the word objective because technically everything is subjective in film, but if I was doing this more objectively, then this would definitely be higher on my list. But I just enjoyed the other films on this list a little bit more. Honestly, this list is like incredibly close. The gap between each spot is so small. So this is by no means a definitive list. Honestly, if you asked me tomorrow, some of these picks would probably change. So that's what you get for making a list like this. But 12 Angry Men, phenomenal movie. Really should deserve higher, but I just prefer watching the other films a little bit more. Coming in at my number 15 spot is Mysterious Skin. Now, this is another one similar to Lahain. If you really only follow mainstream film or mainstream movies, you probably have never heard of this movie in your life. And again, it's really a shame because some of these smaller films are really good. This one specifically is really incredible. Directed by Greg Araki, who, as far as I know, is one of the most prevalent directors in queer cinema, and I really want to get more into his work, into his body of work, because this film just blew me away. It was so amazing. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in the main role, and he just gives a phenomenal performance. Really one of the best performances I've ever seen. I think it's not one of my favorites per se, but he definitely gives an amazing performance. The story is incredibly disturbing and kind of deep rooted. It's honestly kind of hard to talk about because the subject matter of the film is incredibly disturbing and dark. It's basically about a story of two who are teenagers now who got molested as children by their baseball coach, but it kind of depicts the story in two different ways because there's two different characters who got molested, and it depicts their story in two completely different ways, and one way is completely different from the other, and it's honestly super interesting. It sounds like a disgusting movie because obviously that's horrible, but the way they tell the story, the way the movie plays out, the way the characters develop and kind of figure out what actually happened that night is really investing and emotional, and it's overall just one of the best movies I've ever seen and one of the most emotional movies I've ever seen. So if you think you can stomach something like that, and if you think you can stomach that kind of subject matter in order to watch a great film, then I highly recommend you watch this movie because it is pretty hard to get through because of the disturbing subject matter, but once you finish, it's incredibly refreshing because you've seen one of probably the best films that you've ever seen. So Mysterious Skin had to make it in this spot. Coming in at number 14, this is probably the biggest jump that's made it since my previous list. This wasn't even on my previous list, but I had seen it, but it was really low on my list. Upon rewatch, it jumped super high all the way up to this spot, and that is Vittorio De Sica's Bicycle Thieves. Now, you may, if you've been on my channel for a while now, have seen my video called The Film Breakdown on this film, Bicycle Thieves. If you haven't, I'll leave an iCard up above for that video. I honestly really loved making that video. It was basically kind of what inspired the film, kind of the Italian neorealism movement, and that film specifically. And I broke down why I love the film so much, and honestly, it was a great video that I personally think should have got more views. But hey, I really can't complain. And if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. It's one of, in my opinion, my better written videos. But yeah, so this film was amazing. I'm not going to say too much because you can get a much deeper explanation, more in depth on that video. But the performance by obviously the non-actor was honestly really great, really real because he is a real person. And just everything about this film is just super real, depressing, and dark, honestly. And I love that about it because that is exactly what it's setting out to do. So this film is honestly a masterpiece in that way because it sets out to do something and it achieves it. It goes above and beyond what it's trying to achieve, in my opinion. And I think this is a film that I think everybody should watch because it is incredible. It is one of, if not the most popular film in a really important film movement, being the Italian neorealism movement. And so I think if you haven't checked this out, you definitely should because it is one of the best films of all time and one of my favorites. Coming in at number 13, I have Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Now, I really love this film. I honestly haven't actually rewatched it in a while, so this has potential to move up even higher than it already is. This has one of my favorite performances of all time, as we got Jack Nicholson as the main character, Jack Torrance, and it's just such a great film. It is unlike any other horror film where those maybe like slasher films kind of focus more on the killing, the blood, the gore, the scares, and this film is a slow burn psychological thriller and is obviously just beautiful because Stanley Kubrick directed it. And honestly, this is the best looking horror film I've ever seen. I wouldn't say it's my favorite performance in a horror movie. I will get to my favorite later on the video, but honestly, it is the most beautiful horror movie I've ever seen. It is a psychological slow burn, and it's honestly not super scary, but it kind of just chills you to the bone. And that's also a type of horror film that I absolutely love. I'm assuming most of you guys have probably seen this movie, but if you haven't for some reason, you definitely should see it, because even if you're not a horror fan, it's not the scariest horror movie ever, but it is a really well made horror film that maybe you can appreciate a little more than you might enjoy. Coming in at number 12, I have another Damien Chazelle movie, and that is Whiplash. I just love Whiplash. My first memories of this film were actually one time I was on an airplane and I saw my parents watching a movie, and I saw a guy drumming in the movie. I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I'm like, hey, what are you guys watching? They said, oh, it's a movie called Whiplash. I'm like, can I watch? And they're like, no. And honestly, I'm really glad they didn't let me watch it, because I was way too young to see this movie. But yeah, it had stuck in my brain ever since then, because I'm like, that movie looks really, really cool. So I'm like, Whiplash, I want to see Whiplash. Finally, when they let me see it, I watched it. I was blown away. This is an incredible movie, some of the best editing I've ever seen in a movie. Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons give some phenomenal performances, some great writing. They have amazing characters. Again, similar to La La Land, this isn't something where one specific thing stands out amongst the rest. It's where everything is so amazing. Everything is like near perfect in this movie, and I really can't gush about this film enough. It is just so incredible, so investing, so like enthralling. You're on the edge of your seat the entire movie. You really want Andrew to succeed, who obviously is the protagonist, and it's just such an amazing movie. I don't want to gush about it too much because I could go on about this film, but for some reason, if you have not seen this film, you must see it. It is so good. If I can recommend any film on this list out of the ones I've mentioned, it is this one. Go watch Whiplash if you haven't already. Coming in at my number 11 spot, I have a film that you might not have expected to be on this list, but it is Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy. This is my favorite Martin Scorsese film as of right now, and I just absolutely love it. Similar to Lahain, this is a film that I think it gets brownie points for being extra relatable and very important and relevant to today's society, because Rupert Pupkin is one of those characters that is mentally ill, and it kind of shows the effects of what casting out mentally ill people does, because of the drastic measures that he takes in order to get on the talk show. And I think it is a really, really important film to see, because I believe we also need to take care of mentally ill people, because obviously it's hard for them to take care of themselves. So this is a really, really important film, and it's just really well made. Robert De Niro gives an amazing performance, one of my favorites of his. He's just super amazing. It obviously has that signature Scorsese style, that cinematography, that camera work, all is amazing. New York City is depicted in a really, honestly, a way that doesn't make it seem like New York City. It seems like a completely fictional city. I absolutely love it for that. The set design is amazing, and I really just love everything about this film, and it is a super important film to watch for kind of today's day and age. So I would also recommend this one. I would basically recommend every movie on this list, but sorry if I repeat myself. Definitely check this one out. Coming in at my number 10 spot, barely cracking the top 10, is The Shawshank Redemption. Now this might anger a few people, because I know there are people who this is their favorite film of all time, especially in the critic community. So I'm sorry guys, but it's my number 10 spot. Still a phenomenal movie. You got Andy Dufresne, you got Red, some amazing characters. You got Brooks, you got the Warden. Everything in this movie is really, really great. I just love the characters, and the writing is probably the standout in this film, as well as the acting, obviously from Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins as well. Gave some great performances in their roles. Really just amazing. This is one of those other films that people have gushed to death about like everybody has gushed about this film, so there's really nothing I can say. I think the one thing I will say before I move on is that I think the visuals and the cinematography are honestly underrated in this film because nobody talks about them. Everyone talks about the acting and the writing and all that sort of stuff, but I genuinely think the visuals are very, very good. So yeah, Shawshank is a phenomenal movie, one of the best of all time, and it comes in at number 10. Coming in at my number 9 spot, I have The Empire Strikes Back. My favorite Star Wars movie of all time. It is probably the best. That's up for debate, but I really, really love The Empire Strikes Back. It really develops Luke as a character where in the first film he's more of a whiny farm boy who gets a little bit of training and does some great stuff. He has a pretty good arc in that film, but in this film, he goes to Dagobah to train with Yoda, obviously. He doesn't complete his training because he feels like he has to go save his friends. And then because of that, because his training is incomplete, he completely fails. He gets defeated by Darth Vader, who later reveals himself to be his father. It's a spoiler, but let's be honest, if you didn't know that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father, you're living under a rock, so you deserve to get the movie spoiled to you. But I just absolutely love this film. That's one of my favorite twists of all time. Some great acting, especially from Harrison Ford. I really, really love Han Solo in this film. Honestly, everything about this movie is just amazing. Darth Vader takes a bigger role in this movie. He's kind of more of a central focus now. And everything about this movie is just so amazing. The visual effects still look good today, I would say, and just everything about this movie is amazing, and it's some of the most fun I have watching a movie, so for that reason it's got to be really high on my list. Coming in at my number 8 spot, I have The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Now, right now, currently, I'm in the middle of a rewatch of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so this definitely has potential to move up or move down, but I have a feeling it's either going to stay in this spot or move up a little bit. This is the best of the best trilogy of all time in my opinion, and everything about this movie is just so great. You got Elijah Wood in the main role. You got Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee, who I honestly think is a better character than Frodo, but that's another conversation for another day. You got obviously, Aragorn, Legolas, Gandalf, Gollum, all of these just amazing, memorable characters that I love, and they're just so great. I love everything about this movie. There's some really phenomenal action in this movie, probably the most consistently best action in the entire franchise. You got definitely the most emotion in the franchise by far. There's a few moments where I tear up or even cry, like especially at the end of the movie. So that's probably the best action in the trilogy, the best emotion in the trilogy, some of the best acting in the trilogy, and it is definitely the most entertaining, even being at like 4 or 4.5 hours long, which is ridiculously long, but I'm just entertained and enthralled the entire way through, and this is just plain and simple a movie that I cannot get enough of, and I just absolutely love every single time I watch it, so it has to make my list. Coming in at my number 7 spot, I have my favorite horror movie of all time, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. What can I say about Psycho that hasn't already been said? Basically nothing, but I will say that Anthony Perkins gives maybe my favorite performance of all time, period. He is so phenomenal in this movie. Definitely the best performance in a horror movie, like 100%. He obviously plays Norman Bates. You got, the subversion of the audience's expectations, where I'm not going to spoil it, but like if you've seen this movie, you know what happens. It's just amazing. It's just so good, and honestly one of the creepiest horror movies I've ever seen. The atmosphere, everything about Norman's character, and everything about this movie just screams really creepy, and it's just such a good, well-made horror movie. The suspense is unreal, where This is Hitchcock at his best when it comes to suspense, and I just can't say enough about this movie, but I want to keep it nice and short. So Psycho is my favorite and probably the best horror movie of all time, has my favorite performance in a horror movie ever, and just has some phenomenal suspense and payoff. So this has to be really high on my list. Coming in at number 6 is a brand new entry to the list. It is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. I was not expecting to love this film as much as I did. Especially if you told me that I was going to love Do the Right Thing even more than Psycho, I probably would have laughed in your face. But here we are. I like it more than Psycho, at least as of right now. Spike Lee in the main role. I mean, the main role isn't extremely defined, but Spike Lee as Mookie gives a great performance, obviously, and you got a bunch of other great characters that are super memorable. It's honestly surprisingly funny. I laughed out loud quite a few times, specifically at like the 3 older guys that are like sitting outside the restaurant. Those guys were hilarious. Everything about this movie is just so great. It's super chaotic. There's a lot going on, and it has, again, some really great social commentary on like police kind of discrimination and like racism and all that sort of stuff. And that's basically the main story and main plot focus of the film is racism. And that's what drives the story forward. So all the way through is super entertaining. And then the final act, most specifically the last scene outside of the pizzeria, was crazy chaotic. It blew my mind. I was like freaking out. It was so crazy. And the ending payoff of this film, really satisfying, really crazy, and really well directed. There's some camera work in this from Spike Lee that I never thought I would see. They're like really unique, and for that reason I just absolutely adore this film, and I honestly would recommend this to anyone because it's a pretty accessible film for general audiences. Coming in at my number 5 spot, I have Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. This is my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time, and I just absolutely love this film. The animation, looking like it's from a comic book, is absolutely stunning and gorgeous to look at. You got Miles Morales, which is a phenomenal character. He gets some great development, some great emotional moments, some great voice acting from Shameik Moore. Just all of the different Spider people. Honestly, I love them. I don't really know why anyone would complain about any of them, because some of them just have smaller roles. So like, why are you gonna hate? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But overall, like, combine the animation with some great action, some amazing music, you just get a super fun film. Like, I just have a blast watching this movie. This is probably the second most rewatchable film on this list for me, and I just adore this movie like almost no other. So it has to make my top 5. Coming in at my number 4 spot, I have Jacques Tati's Playtime. Now this one definitely fell down a little bit. This used to be my second favorite film of all time. Also take in that I haven't rewatched it in a while, so this could move up, but as of right now, it is my number 4 spot. I just adore this movie. You've probably never even heard of it. If you have, I love you. But you know, Jacques Tati obviously plays his character, who is Monsieur Hulot, who is basically just like kind of like a Charlie Chaplin, the tramp character, who doesn't really talk too much and is kind of more visual, physical comedy. I'm not a huge fan of that sort of stuff, but this film is actually quite funny. When like, I actually laughed quite a few times in this film, but also it is just probably the most visually stunning film I've ever seen. The set design, the camera work, the cinematography, everything to do with how the film looks is just beautiful. And then on top of that, you got some pretty good characters that are memorable. They're not super deep because obviously it's just a slapstick comedy movie, but there's some memorable characters. You got some really funny moments, a unique scene, which is the nightclub sequence, which is like a 40-minute long scene. Absolutely love that scene to death. It is super hilarious, just chaos unfolding, and I can't gush about this film enough. In the future, I think I'm going to make a film breakdown on this film about why I love it so much more in depth than I just did. So you'll get some more deeper thoughts on this film and why I love it. So be on the lookout for that. But Playtime comes in at number 4. Coming in, making our way into the top 3, we got Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. This might just be the best film of all time objectively, I guess, in my opinion, so maybe not objectively, but I think it is one of, if not the best made movie of all time. The visuals are gorgeous, just stunning. The way they depict space in this movie is perfect, honestly. Everything, the cinematography, the way space is depicted, the spaceships, everything is just beautiful and patient and slow, and I honestly can't really put into words other than of how beautiful this film is and how it makes me feel. I can't really describe why I love it so much other than that, so you'll just have to take my word for it. I absolutely adore this movie, and it comes in at number 3. Coming in at number 2, I have Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. This is another one that it's kind of hard to put into words why I love it so much, but the performances from Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta and Bruce Willis are just out of this world. Some of the best performances I've ever seen. You got some Quentin Tarantino camera work in there. You got some Quentin Tarantino ultraviolence in there. You got some Quentin Tarantino dialogue in there. Everything is so Tarantino-ified. It's not a word, but it's such a Tarantino movie, and I love it for that. Everything about this movie is perfect. The pacing is perfect. The non-chronological story is perfect. The acting is perfect. The dialogue is perfect. I just love this movie so much, and it has one of the best scenes of all time, in my opinion, which is the diner sequence at the end. I just absolutely adore this film. You've probably seen it. You might not have actually, but Pulp Fiction, you've definitely heard of it. It is my number 2 favorite film of all time. But coming in at number 1, if you've been on my channel or follow me on Letterboxd for any time ever, like, you will know this is my number 1 spot. It is Fantastic Mr. Fox. I've said this more than a million times on my channel probably. This is easily my favorite movie of all time. Don't see it changing anytime soon. It's been my favorite movie ever since it came out, so it's been my favorite movie for like 11 years now. Kind of crazy to think about, but I absolutely adore everything about this movie. I've explained it a million times. I'll explain it a million more times. The animation is stunning. The voice acting is amazing. The characters are great, memorable, deep. They got some great themes in the mix. It's just absolute blast, super entertaining. Might make a video on this film as well about why I love it so much, more in-depth explanation, but for now, that is what you get. So that is my favorite film of all time. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, definitely make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you're the first one to know every time I upload a brand new video. But that is it for this video, guys. Hope you guys have a great 2021, and I'm out. Peace.